I'm Clara, and I create Chinese medicine and acupuncture contents for students and practitioners, making it easy to grasp and fun to learn. If it's your first time here, welcome, welcome, welcome. If not, and you're watching the replay, you're welcome to leave the comments in the section below or ask me questions. I love questions. Today I wanted to really talked about acupuncture practice management because I get so many questions from new practitioners or even practitioners that have been around for a while that still feel like they're not sure how to communicate their diagnosis to their patients. So we are going to talk about how to communicate your diagnosis, the causes, and the treatment plan to your patients so they can really understand what you're trying to do, trust you in your ability to help them because you have the tools to help them, but you need to be able to communicate to them the right way, right? That's super important. So let's start at the beginning, okay? So when we want to communicate the diagnosis to our patient, the first thing that I'm going to say is do not say to a patient, you have liver qi stagnation, you have kidney yin deficiency, or you have liver yang rising, or you have spleen qi deficiency. And the reason is that you have been to school to learn the TCM jargon, the TCM ways of explaining and understanding TCM diagnosis. The patients, on the other hand, have never been there. So unless your patient is maybe, a yoga teacher and they're very, very well versed in TCM language, then you could do that with them because they might have a knowledge. But most patients have no idea what spleen qi deficiency means. And if you say their kidney is deficient, they're going to think that their physical kidney is deficient, and that's going to give them false impression of what's going on with the body, right? So it's super important to communicate the right diagnosis. Think about this. When we went to school in TCM and we learned all the language, the first 3 months of learning TCM, most of us were like, what does that mean? I don't get this. And eventually it all falls into place and eventually it all makes sense. So imagine patients that have never heard of anything, that is TCM jargon, like qi deficiency and yang excess and yang deficiency. They won't be able to understand us. It's the same thing when someone has a heart attack. The doctor does not say to them, oh, you just had a myocardial infarction. They tell them you have a heart attack because patients understand heart attack, but they don't understand the physiological aspect that the doctor knows because they didn't go to medical school. So it's the same thing. So we want to communicate to our patients a way in a term that they really relate to and understand. Does that make sense, you guys? If that makes sense, give me love. Woo, 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 woo. I love it, right? Makes sense? Okay. So when we talk to patients, the best way to communicate our diagnosis is to explain to patients the root cause, because everyone can understand the root cause. And what I love about TCM is there's always a root cause. The Western conventional medicine may say unknown cause. Like say I have patients coming for fertility and it's unknown infertility because all the levels of everybody is perfect and everything looks great in the physical aspect. But we all know as TCM practitioners that the emotional aspect is huge, right? There is a lot of, stress, long-standing anxiety that can actually really bring the body into a fight or flight state all the time. And it's very hard to conceive or to have the body be in a rest and recover or parasympathetic state if you're constantly on the fight or flight. So the reason could be emotional trauma or long-standing emotions, right? So it's important that we tell the patients what we think the cause or the causes are, and that's how I start. So I'll give you an example just so you see how I do this. So once we do a full consultation with the patients, and I'm going to go through this, we're going to talk about this in a minute, but once I explain to patients the diagnosis, I will never say you have liver qi stagnation and stomach heat. I will say all the stress that you've been experiencing lately due to whatever is happening in their life is causing tension in your body. And that tension also goes and creates acidity in your stomach, which creates the heartburn and the acid reflux. So the stress is creating all this acidity to react, and that's creating the physical symptoms. So you don't have to say liver G stagnation and stomach heat. You just can explain that stress creates the physical symptoms. Does that make sense? I'll give you another example. If someone is going to be fatigued all the time, they're exhausted, maybe they have chronic fatigue syndrome and they don't know why, we can explain to them that it could come from diet. Maybe they don't have the right nutrients, which we know chronic fatigue, let's say, could be spleen Qi deficiency. I would not say to someone you're spleen Qi deficient, but I will say that you are going to, need to change your diet. Your diet is not nourishing your body. That's why there's no gas in the tank and you're always tired. Or it could be that you worry and overthink so much that it's draining your body of energy. So the cause is worry, overthinking, right? Tell them the cause, and that's what's causing what they came to ask you help for. Okay, so that's the first thing. Really speak in terms they understand, because when patients understand, they start to trust your ability to help them, which is super important. When we see a patient for the first time, let's say, it's really important, I said at the beginning, that we're going to talk about details. It's really important that you look them in the eyes when you talk to them. Do not look down. You got to look confident, right? And I know at the beginning, some people are introverted and it's very difficult to feel the confidence because we feel like, oh, you went to school, you have the knowledge. So it's okay to feel like, oh, can I help this patient? Believe you me, you want to hear the story? I'll give you the story. When I first had my very first patient in my clinic, the first patient. So first of all, I didn't have any patient the first week I started practicing. I had zero patients the second week. I had zero patients the third week. So the first 3 weeks of my practice, I had all this knowledge and nobody could benefit from it. I had no patients. The fourth week, the last week of the first month I practiced, it was October. I do remember 18 years in practice, 18 years ago. I had nobody the first month. The last week of October, I had 3 patients. And they were all friends of my husband and I who felt sorry for me and came to support me. So the first month, no patients at all because 3 friends came, and that was very, very sweet of them, but they came all the way. Some of them traveled 45 minutes just to support, right? The 5th week, which was the first week of November, a month later, this person calls me. I pick up the phone. This is so true, you guys. I pick up the phone and she goes, I'd like to make an appointment. And I was so surprised that I go, really? I was so surprised. I actually said, really? So she goes, yeah. So of course I said, oh, do you work during the day? And she said, yeah, I work till 5. So I said, well, we could do 5:30 tomorrow. Would that work for you? And she said, yes. And she came in. So first patients, yeah. She came in and she's my first patient. And you guys, what I think is really interesting is she wrote down on her intake form that she was coming to see me. The reason why she came to see me, because we want to put that on the intake form to know what the chief complaint is about, was Hashimoto's disease. And I went to school for 5 years, you guys, to do a doctorate in Chinese medicine. And I learned a lot of disorders, but you don't learn all the disorders. And so one of the things I will say is as you start practicing, your knowledge increase. The best knowledge is when you start practicing. This is when you grow. This is when you become amazing. And school is giving you the foundation, but practice will give you everything you need. So when she wrote down Hashimoto's disease, I was just like, my heart sank. I'm like, first patient, and I have no idea what Hashimoto's disease is. And I can tell you, obviously, I know what it is today, but at the time, there was no internet to go Google what Hashimoto's disease was. So I was like, but the great part about TCM is that it's all about diagnosis of symptoms. So even though I didn't know that this was a hypothyroidism disorder at the time, I started asking questions by how does that manifest with you, right? That's what I did. I didn't say, oh, okay, what's Hashimoto's? Obviously, I want her to have trust in me, and I know that I have the knowledge to help her. So I had to say, how does that manifest with you? And she started telling me how she was fatigued all the time and, really weak digestive system, and she's always cold. And the next thing you know, she has spleen Qi deficiency, she has excess damp, excess cold. I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. In TCM perspective, it makes sense, right? So I can make my TCM diagnosis. Of course, I don't tell her that this is spleen Qi deficiency, right? Because that's not what we want to say. So this is what I'm saying. Like, TCM is so amazing because, even if you don't know what a disorder is yet, then you can go research it, which I did after. I went to research more about Hashimoto's and what it was exactly. And since then, I've had a lot of patients with hypothyroidism, like PCOS and hypothyroidism and Hashimoto, etc. So this is what I love about TCM perspective, right? Okay, so the reason I'm sharing this with you is because we can always help patients, but we have to explain and educate patients on how we're going to do a treatment plan. And I think the first block that new practitioners have is to communicate the diagnosis to patients. So don't use TCM jargon. Remember, just use the cause and effect. Your stress is creating your acid reflux. Your worry and overthinking is creating your fatigue. Your diet, which is not supporting your body, is creating all the digestive issue because your gut is so inflamed. That's how we're going to really communicate our diagnosis to the patient. Not talking about Qi deficiency, okay? So the second thing is the treatment plan. So when we are going to look at the treatment plan, is explaining to patients how many times they need to come, right? You guys, if you've been in practice for a while, you know that one of the questions patients will ask is, how many treatments do I need, right? That is a big question because they want to know, am I investing, first of all, my time, financially, money as well, and my energy into this therapy? How many sessions do I need? Do I need 5, 10, 20? Well, that's the fun part, right? What I always say to patients, and this is what I say because that is the truth. You guys, we all know that every patient responds differently. It depends on everything they do outside of the clinic, right? So if you are going to be someone that educate your patient about what they need to eat and what they need to do, but they don't do it. They still eat not well. They still don't go to sleep at the right time for them. They don't follow through or not compliant. It is going to take longer than someone that's compliant, right? So there's all those factors. So what I always say to patients is, if the patient says, how many treatment do I need? This is what I say. Every person and every patient is different. It is going to depend on how compliant you are with all the education that we've talked about today and all the little tidbits, lifestyle tips that I gave you and recommend for you to do. But what I will say is, give me 3 sessions, okay? In 3 sessions, if you don't see any improvement in your health at all, then this is probably not the right avenue for you. And it might take 10 sessions. It might take 3 months. It might take 6 sessions. It might take 2. I don't know exactly because everybody responds differently, but give me 3 sessions. If you say that to patients, they have a number in their mind. 3 is what they're going to do. You don't need to say 10. Start with 3 because in 3 sessions, when you do an acupuncture treatment and other things, patients are going to respond. And even though they may come and they may come back the second time and you may ask, how did you feel after treatment? And they may say, well, I don't know, there was no change, right? You've seen that, you've had that, right? I don't know, I don't see any change. If I treat fertility patients and they come for fertility, how are they going to know that this is working? Patients with fertility ask me that question. It's different from pain. If someone comes with back pain and you do a treatment and they're like, well, I don't know, I guess it was a bit better for an hour or 2 after, but then they came back. By the second session, they'll say, you know what, I really slept well that night. It felt much better, but the next day it came back. That's progress, right? It gets longer each time. When it comes to fertility, patients will say, well, how do I know this is working if I come every week? Now, when it comes to fertility, I usually tell patients, I want to see you weekly because you have a 4-week cycle and we need to be consistent. With acupuncture, it is very it's consistency that is going to help. And the reason is because acupuncture does not cure or treat anything. Let me repeat this. Acupuncture doesn't cure or treat anything. And I tell that to all my patients. And you can tell them that too, because it's the truth. Acupuncture, literally what it does is when we insert the needles, and this is how I answer that question, how does acupuncture work? Because that's a question you and I both get all the time. I always say it doesn't cure or treat anything. What acupuncture does is when I insert a needle to an area that is concentrated with minute nerves, it triggers that nerve to send a signal to the brain to self-regulate, to reset, to decrease inflammation, to bring blood flow to certain areas. What we're trying to do with acupuncture is trigger your brain to self-heal. It is a self-healing tool. That's why outside forces are going to make a difference. That's why compliancy is going to make a difference, right? This is important because we're trying to get the body in a parasympathetic state. Most patients, when they are coming into the clinic, or most of us during the day, we are on the fight or flight. We are in a sympathetic state, right? Central nervous system, 2 states. We want to put the patient in a parasympathetic state, which is in a rest and recover state, which happens when you meditate, when you're in a really relaxed state, when you are, hiking, maybe when you are sleeping deeply. When we get acupuncture and we feel that heavy relaxed state, that's parasympathetic, and that's when the body self-heal. So if the body self-heal, that's what acupuncture does. It triggers the body to heal itself. That's why it doesn't cure or treat anything. Use everything I say in this video. Watch it again. I hope you're taking note. Write it down because you want to start having a really good relationships with your patients. Why? First, because they'll trust your ability to help them. Second, because they will be your best advocate. They will go around and tell everybody how amazing you are because you have a great relationships with them. And in order to have a good relationship, communication is key, okay? I have a lot of my students once they graduate and a lot of practitioners that I know that are friends of mine that are absolutely sweet, sweet people, but feel uncomfortable in telling patients they need to rebook again and come next week and the week after, or come back this week, or whatever the treatment is, whatever your plan is, right? Because it feels salesy and gross and yucky, right? Like a car salesman. They always compare poor car salesmen. They always get it, right? So this is something that everybody feels really uncomfortable with. So what I wanted to say is, listen to this. I hope you're taking note. Do not ever feel like you're forcing your patients to book with you and it's yucky and salesy. Listen to what I'm saying here. Because when someone comes and sees you, they are asking for help. They're coming to see you because they want your help, right? Okay, yeah? Okay. You are going to give them help. Part of your help is education. The patient doesn't know they need to come back. They doesn't know how many times they need to come back. They don't know how acupuncture works. They don't know how anything works around TCM. You do. You have the tools. And if you don't share that with your patient, you're not serving them. They came to ask you for help and you're not helping them. So don't think you're pushing them. I've never forced a patient to come back. I give the education. This is what we're trying to do. You came for whatever it is. Let's say it's for fertility. Let's say it's for insomnia. So you've had insomnia for over 10 years. It probably will take a while for your body to self-regulate because your body has been on this journey of no sleep for so long. We need to reset it and we need to self-regulate. And that's going to take more than one session in order to do this. Those are also the other things you can do to help. And then you can educate your patient what else they can do at home, having a cool room, having, white noise if they're very sensitive to you waking up very easily. Give them all the education piece, right? That's really important. And then tell them we're going to need a few sessions because, of course, you've had this for so long. So give me about 3 sessions. And then at the end, you can tell them, I will see you probably, depending what you want. Let's say you want to see them weekly. Why don't we book you weekly for the next 3 weeks so you get the right appointment at the right time for you, so you don't have to worry about which time to make your appointment. The patient has the ability to say, you know what, no, I don't want to do that, and walk away. But you give them all the information. This is how you can help them. Then they can make the decision. But if you don't tell them this is what the treatment plan is, then they don't know they need to come back next week or in 3 weeks or tomorrow or in 2 days. They have no clue. All you're doing is educating your patients. Okay? That's super important. Educate your patients. Once they have all the tools and education, then they can decide if they want to come back and see you or not. And of course, if they came to ask you for help, they want your help. So it should always feel like you are here to help and educate your patients. And if you don't explain to them that they need to come back and they need to book a few appointments, then you're not giving them a service. Does that make sense? And then making a treatment plan and educating the patients on what's the best treatment plan for them so they can get better. Because otherwise, if they come one time, don't come back, they're going to say, well, acupuncture didn't work for me. And that's not good for our whole community, right? As TCM Rockstars, you want to make sure that you do provide the best education so patients know how acupuncture can help them, right? Okay, so I have a little piece of paper I made here for you guys because I wanted to make sure I don't forget to talk about everything. We want to make sure we give more than what the patient expected. Okay, it's all about building relationships. So once the patient has all those questions answers, when I do a whole consultation, at the end of the consultation, I ask patients, I said, I've asked you a lot of questions. It's your turn. Do you have questions? So the question is, how does acupuncture works? How many treatment do I need? We've covered this. One of the things is that is going to be for patient is also, does it hurt? If it's the first time, right? So this is another thing that you could use in your practice. Believe you me, it works. I've done it for 18 years and it works every single time. So again, take note. When patients say, does it hurt? And I ask them, are you really nervous and anxious? Well, I'm really scared about needles. You know, I'm the one that has to lay down when they take my blood. I have fainted, right? Some people are very, very anxious about needle, and it is fair to feel that way, right? I always tell them, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to put one needle in, just one. And then you tell me how you feel. If you think, you know what, I can't handle this. This is horrible. I can't do it. We stop. You go home. That's it. You don't have to stay. I'm not going to force you. I don't want to force you to be here. One needle. If you think it's impossible, it's just awful, then you get up and you go. 18 years of practice, you guys. I have never, ever had someone walking away. Ever. Ever. So you put the first needle, you pick whatever needles you're going to do, because of course you're going to pick your treatment and what points you're going to do. You do your first needle and then you ask the patient, how do you feel? And every single time they're like, oh, it's fine. Okay. And then you continue. Okay. So that's how you handle, does it hurt? All right. You want to make sure that the experience of your patient is above and beyond what they were expecting. Okay. So make sure they're warm enough, specifically if you have coldies, right? Heat lamp, super important. Make sure the music or anything, the environment is suitable for relaxation and to make sure the patient can go in a parasympathetic state. Make sure they have pillows this is little details, but if a woman is facing down, so she's prone, facing down, and she's heavy breasted, and her shoulders are going to go like this, and it's going to press really hard on her, you want to have shoulder pillow. Make sure everything is flat. Her spine is flat. It's not like this because of the shoulders curving over because of the breasts that are heavier. It's really important to make sure that all the curvature of the body is supported so people can relax, right? This is really important. Dim the light. Don't put, or if you're in a place where there's no dimming light, make sure that it's really the windows, there's a curtain or something so it's not just right in your face. People that have headaches don't want bright lights in their face. I can tell you that, right? So that's super important. It's all in the details. Make sense? Okay. Make sure that if they have questions, that's another thing too. After you come back into the room and you take all your needles out, you want to ask the patients, how do you feel? And they're like, they might say, oh, I slept, it was really relaxing, or they might say I was very antsy, I don't know, I couldn't relax. If people say I couldn't relax, I always say to them, okay, we're going to do big deep breathing exercise next time, a little bit to relax. It takes time to get into a parasympathetic state because you're so stressed out, right? And then we are going to ask them, do you have any question? And they might say no. And we're going to escort them to the front and make an appointment to the front. The receptionist and the reception. And you could be making the appointment. Doesn't matter how your practice goes. You're going to make the appointment, or your assistant will do that, make the appointment for you. And then that person is leaving. You always make sure that person has an extreme above and beyond experience. So make sure you give them homework, things that they can do themselves, that they can take action on. Could be nutrition, could be anything, lifestyle tips that you ask them to do, okay? Second, within 48 hours after their first treatment, the first time they come and see you, the first treatment, within 48 hours, give them a call. I know I do this because we used to have this kind of phone, but now it's this kind of phone. I'm old generation. I'm in my 50s, people. So give them a call 48 hours after the first treatment. And I'm not talking about an email. I'm not talking about text. I'm talking actually voice. Voice is super important. So call them. Either you leave a message if they're not there, or talk to them, depending, right? But this is what you're going to do. You're going to ask them, and this is what I've done for years, and it is really, really rewarding because the patients feel valued, right? Once they pay and they left, can't forget about your patients, right? They are important. So I call the patient and I will say, this is Clara. I just wanted to see how you felt since the acupuncture treatment, any change. And this is also good because patients will notice and go, oh, I slept really well that night. Thank you for calling. I'm like, great. I also wanted to ask you, do you have any questions for me that you forgot to ask because it was the first time and we talked about so many things? Anything you were thinking about after? And they may ask a question and say, yeah, you told me about this supplement and I can't remember. You had the paper, but I lost it and blah, blah, whatever it is. And then you can advise them and you can recommend or answer questions because maybe they have questions they forgot to ask, right? And patients really appreciate that you took the time. If they're not there and you leave a message, this is what I say. Hey, this is Clara. I just wanted to check how you felt after your acupuncture treatment, or if you have any questions that we didn't answer that day when we saw each other on Tuesday. I'll see you next week on Monday at 5. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to call me or send me an email. I'm right here waiting for you. Something like that. You know what I mean? So you want to make sure your patients are very well taken care of, because that's how your practice is going to build relationship. And this is called the, referral train. If you take good care of your patients, they will tell everybody how amazing you are. And if they tell everybody how amazing you are, then everybody benefits from acupuncture, because what? Acupuncture rocks! You knew I was going to say that, right? So I really appreciate you guys coming. I hope it was useful. For the people who are watching the replay, leave me comments and questions below, because this is what I've been wanting to talk about for a while. So this was 35 minutes on practice management. Recap really quickly if you missed out. Diagnosis, communicating your diagnosis to your patient. Do not say liver qi stagnation or kidney qi deficiency. Tell patients the root cause, right? Your stress is causing your acidity in your stomach to create the acid reflux. Your diet is creating digestive issues, and that's why you have loose stools. Don't tell them they have spleen qi deficiency, right? Then tell them about your treatment plan and why it's important to educate your patients so they know and they have the tools to decide if they want to continue to do treatment with you. Answer their question. Tell them how acupuncture works. Does it hurt? We talked about that as well, right? All this is really important. Make sure that you have attention to details and take good care of your patients, because they are so advocate for acupuncture. They will be forever, because acupuncture rocks. And I have lots on my YouTube channel. I have lots more on my website. So go to AcuProAcademy.com. I have resources for everyone. Make sure you take advantage of them. Bye guys. Have a beautiful day.